What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I want to talk about what's going on with NVIDIA stock and also break down how it may affect the whole market and Tesla, and talk about why on earth it's going to make a massive move most likely over the next couple of days. Before I break anything down with all this information, though, before I say anything about Tesla and NVIDIA and break down the technicals, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I am personally not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $50 cash reward. The offer ends very soon in just about 13 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so looking at the market, I want to break down something very, very important. For the week, like I told you guys yesterday, we have NVIDIA's earnings. This is going to be very massive for the markets. This company can move the entire stock market, or at least play a big role in dictating the momentum that ends up impacting everything. So, with all of this going on, with this stock having its earnings, there's going to likely be a lot of hype associated with it. And there's a very high probability of this thing potentially running starting as soon as Monday. But remember, after earnings come out, you don't know which way the market is going to move. We don't know which way NVIDIA is going to move after earnings. So we always have to be open minded simultaneously. But let's break down some very important technicals and things like that to start us off. Looking at Tesla, there's a potential accumulation that is forming on here, but looking at NVIDIA, things are looking a little bit different. Not only has this thing been forming this very bullish looking structure. Well, with both of these things said in mind, the fact that Tesla had an accumulation with some buying pressure that increased, the volume of Tesla went up, and we started to see, more buying pressure on Tesla than before. The buyers became more aggressive, and the algorithms, the overall algo flow, became more bullish overall. So what this means is the robots dictating the market, okay, they started to switch from being more bearish to more bullish on Friday. And if this maintains for Monday, the whole market could start pushing. Also, because of Apple trying to break out. I talked about that in my video from yesterday. So if you want to see that, you could just look at that. All these things could help the market start pushing a bit. But what about for NVIDIA? How is this thing looking? So I find this very interesting, this entire setup. This looks like a very, very nice looking bull flag, and this thing looks like it wants to break out. However, let's now talk about how this thing ended up moving. So what happened was NVIDIA ended up getting this nice bounce as soon as Monday from this 403 area all the way up to about 448, almost like 450 basically. And then since then, it's been just remaining very choppy and forming this channel, once again, forming this nice flag. But then what happened for Friday was we got this big sell off on NVIDIA coming all the way down to this 416 level, which is the next support I'd called out if we did break below 420. And it came super close. It actually hit the 416s just a couple of pennies away from what I was predicting. And it actually bounced off that. And then this thing started pushing right back into the channel as if nothing happened. So what does this mean? Could it be, okay, I'm going to make this very simple, that these institutions dumped NVIDIA so they could start buying and buying and buying. You can see the overall volume went up like crazy. We started to see, like I said before, the algos switch in the overall market for many different tech stocks, especially after tech became very, very oversold. Could they have just dumped it so they could start buying these dips because they're getting ready to start pushing this thing next week? There's a very high probability that that is exactly what happened. This was the buying opportunity down here at this 416 area. We had another opportunity just a few days ago when this thing was down around this 403 area. It pumped so much in such a very short period of time. So, with all of this going on, the question is, will this thing break out immediately, or will this thing remain in this like overall channel? I mean, there's a real possibility of that potentially happening. It could stay here for a little bit longer, but I am anticipating it's going to break out like super, super soon. I think there's a very high probability of that potentially happening. And the way I see it going is, if you look at the full measured move of the breakout, that's going to take this thing very close to at least 462, if not 470. 470 is also a possibility. It really depends on where it starts out and when the breakout actually happens. Does it come down like this for one last liquidity grab before this thing starts breaking out as soon as Monday, then just start pushing and pushing and pushing like it has in the past? Then it gets a rejection off like 450. It starts trading sideways here and then starts pushing higher and higher for Tuesday/Wednesday and just goes and goes. And then on Wednesday, it just keeps pushing right before earnings because earnings come out after the market closes for Wednesday. So it has some time on its hands technically. Uh, there's a possibility of this potentially happening. It just shoots straight up right into earnings all the way up to 470, if not higher. They could even push this even higher. But what I'm trying to tell you is this thing is very volatile and it could move like crazy. If you don't believe me, look at how much it pumped in such a short period of time. It's just absolutely insane. And when looking at how this thing moves, it has the overall capabilities of potentially just continuing to move to the upside despite what on earth some technicals could tell us. So it's a very, very resilient and strong stock with lots and lots of buyers. So I think it's very probable we might see this thing get to at least 460, maybe even 470, approaching earnings. Okay. Earnings come out after the market closes for Wednesday, and then we'll have to see after that. Now, many of these analysts are raising their price targets on NVIDIA again by 33.3% or higher. We have Rosenblatt basically doing that so far, and the list goes on with many of these others. They raised their target from $600 to $800, but they did mention that there could be some hardships for them, such as supply constraints. They mentioned this for the H100 Hopper product and other things like that. They said it could limit the company's guidance. So I do agree that guidance is going to be very, very important. But despite the limitation, they also believe that demand will outpace supply by at least 50% over the next few quarters. That's going to be very important to note. So, guidance is going to be key. What do they tell us about the next few quarters, the next year? If it is strong guidance, the market could still pump more. If not, this thing could get a rug pull. So, you have to be very careful when playing earnings or doing anything like that. Now, moving forward, they mentioned that without the supply constraints or anything like that, their EPS could reach $10.35, which is very, very good for 2024, which is very, very bullish. And for 2025, it's going to be well in the 20s. That's very bullish as well if they announce anything like that. We saw other analysts come out saying that they gave NVIDIA a $500 target with the buy rating. Others are saying to buy it and buy it. Most analysts are just saying to buy NVIDIA. It's so bullish and this and that. They could be correct because it is the leading provider of graphics networking solutions. They have very amazing gaming GPUs, and the list goes on with their other semiconductors and products like that. Very, very important for data centers, AI solutions, AI development, and the list goes on. If they keep saying AI, that's going to be awesome. But the thing is, AI itself or very strong earnings alone are not always everything for a company's share price because guidance is going to be key. What they announce for the future is going to be important as well. So, what do I think could play out? I honestly don't know what's going to happen, but here are some possibilities. I don't know if this thing is going to shoot up to 600, 500, 550, or if it comes down to much lower levels. Whichever way it goes is going to dictate the whole market. I want to be honest with you all. It's going to have a big effect on the whole market. Uh, and I just don't know where it's going to move. I don't know where it's going to gap. It could be a crazy gap, could be a not so crazy one. It all depends on so many different factors. So it's going to gap somewhere after earnings comes out. Is it going to gap all the way up to 500 plus and just start shooting up to like 525? Could that happen? It's a possibility. That is a more bullish case. I would not rule out that possibility. And if this were to happen, this could technically help a lot of stocks out there start pushing even higher just based off this factor alone, not accounting for external factors such as like bank downgrades or like the Fed coming out and saying something crazy. Exclude those factors. We're just talking about Nvidia in this case. Could this thing push up, so who knows, 560, some crazy level like that, and make its way up to like 600? Could this thing do that? I mean, it's a possibility. This thing could gap up like crazy, right? You may think I'm crazy for talking about such crazy high numbers, but in a stock like this, I would not rule out something insane. I would not rule out some very, very high pumps like this and crazy targets. It moves like crazy. Now, after earnings come out, what if it doesn't do as well? What if they miss on earnings? What if earnings are okay, but guidance is not great and investors start to panic? It's a possibility. right? It is a possibility. So after earnings come out, this thing could gap down well below, 400. It could gap down to like 380 and start tanking. That's another possibility. I'm not promising it. I'm just saying you need to be prepared for this. You have to be prepared for it to come down to like 350 or so if things go south, or even lower levels than that. I expect a very big move, so it could come much lower. It could end up gapping all the way down to like 340 and then just like dropping all the way down to 300. I would not rule that out. So, with that said, approaching its earnings, it's going to likely pump. The market's going to likely try to hold up. But then after its earnings, we also have Jerome Powell speaking on either Thursday or Friday. I'm not sure if he's going to speak on Wednesday, but I think on Thursday or Friday, Powell's going to be speaking. If Nvidia just like gaps down, the whole market could get slowed down because of it. If not, it really depends on the extremity and also what Jerome Powell says. If not, if it pumps more, the market could pump even more for Thursday. So it all depends on this company. It's going to be big, one of the biggest earnings of the month. We're going to have to just wait and see. I also want to add that for Tesla, Tesla could get a very, very big move because of NVIDIA. I don't know exactly how this is going to move, by the way, guys, just to be honest with you all. I could switch back to the 30 minutes time frame. But like I was showing you guys about NVIDIA, right? If Nvidia gets some kind of pump approaching its earnings, which I think it will, and the market starts holding up immediately, we could see Tesla just start pushing from here to higher levels, like to 221, 225 are possibilities. It could test the top of this channel as soon as Monday for 221 to 222. If not, if it wants to drop a little bit more, I would not rule out the possibility of like 212 or even like 210 before some kind of bounce. That could also happen, but once again, we want to be open-minded just to be safe. And then after NVIDIA's earnings, there's no telling what's going to happen. Like I marked yesterday, the possibilities are just endless with Tesla. If there's a bad piece of news, it could come down to like 210 and then try to get a bounce, just a small bounce. I'm not talking about anything like too insane or too crazy. I went over this yesterday. If it does break 221, that's like assuming that. And then NVIDIA's earnings will dictate where it goes after that, whether it gaps down, whether it doesn't. It all depends on NVIDIA, at least that, and then also Jerome Powell. Or what could happen is we just start pushing with the market, with Apple and etc. just as soon as Monday. And we see Tesla just start trying to push up to these high levels. Maybe it rejects off its resistance initially, like this, and then it eventually breaks out a little bit later. So like it basically just continues into Tuesday to higher levels thanks to Apple and these other companies, and just starts pushing and pushing to higher levels, but it ends up failing later on. That could also be another case. It all depends on these earnings and stuff like that. But approaching NVIDIA's earnings, I think there's a good possibility that Tesla is going to try to push up. There's going to be a push up coming. And I want you guys to be aware of this. I want you to be well aware of how this is going to play out and everything like that. But going forward, after NVIDIA's earnings, who knows what's going to happen? There's always the possibility of another rug pull and Tesla coming down hard, or the opposite could happen. But until then, like I said before, there is potential for Apple to try to help the market push. News will be an external factor that could lead to this second possibility, but I'm not really leaning in that direction. So make sure, especially on Wednesday, we watch NVIDIA's earnings, see how this is going to affect the market. It's going to likely start us off very strong with a nice push. And then after that, who knows what's going to happen with all these different numbers coming out, with Powell speaking, Jackson Hole, and the list goes on with all these different factors. Okay. So I hope this is as clear as possible. Can NVIDIA cause Tesla to squeeze? My answer to that is it's technically a possibility for Thursday. If NVIDIA just gaps up like crazy and starts pushing, we could see a small squeeze on Tesla. Tesla could go even higher before this thing ends up dropping later on during the week into like the 230s if NVIDIA were to end up just continuing to squeeze. But then later on in the future, later on, it could always come back down because of the fact that there's so many other factors affecting this market, from the Chinese news that comes out, not to mention other things such as the banking situation, any downgrades from the banks, and the list goes on. We have CPI coming out later on too. So even if Tesla gets some kind of bounce and tries to break out, even if that happens, There's always the possibility of it rejecting at some of these levels and eventually coming back down to continue dropping to like 210 or lower levels in the future. I want to make that clear. I am not a perma bull. I'm not always going to just talk about pumping, pumping, pumping without any downside. There will be downside. It still is possible. And I personally don't think that the downside is done with. There could be more coming. This might just be a very temporary relief rally that's just temporary. So be open minded to anything. And I will talk to you guys more about Tesla and the market going into tomorrow. So thank you for listening. Have a great day. Market to the moon alongside Tesla. The long term is very bright. And peace out.